Our base and colony completely destroyed by droids. Our people massacred and mutilated. All that we had ever worked for completely and utterly gone. But all is not lost, for one man lives on. Well, looks like we made it out in one piece, for the most part, but something tells me that those hordes of droids aren't quite done with us yet. In other words, those filthy clankers will no doubt be here soon. First things first, we're going to need to repair our pod. If we start getting waves of them like we were before, we need a quick escape again. The civilians of this little outlander town are armed and dangerous, though they wouldn't be able to stand up to the might of the droids, so it's kinda just us, looks like. It does appear that the droids have yet to track our position after we left our base, though, as there is no current indication that there will be any waves while we're here. But what's this? It would appear that our distress signal that we sent out from our pod has been received, and our glorious empire has sent reinforcements. Asafar is no longer alone. He is now joined by 3 of his clone marine brethren. There's just one little issue. We need a base, and no matter how nicely we asked them, these outlanders were not willing to part with theirs. Unfortunately, it seems that the Empire is going to have to annex this place. Well, that was about as easy as you could hope for, I suppose. Now this place is ours. Well, technically not yet. We had to run around and finish off their mini turrets, which was quite unfortunate, as we would have liked to have kept these to help us with the droids, but whatever. There was one little issue, though. It appears now that we've attacked the Outlanders and annexed their territory, they are also going to be part of the waves who attack us, so we'll be dealing with them and the droids for now. Speaking of dealing with them, all of their filthy corpses are littering our new home, so we need to get them the hell out of here so we don't go crazy looking at them while they rot. We all of course have many augmentations, including a joy wire, but still, a debuff like this sucks, so we don't want to deal with it. I must say that our brothers who have joined us here on this planet to help out with our little droid problem sure did enjoy finally sleeping in a bed. God only knows how long they were having to sleep standing up in those pods. Now it's time for a little bit of refurbishing though. We're going to be getting rid of all these filthy fermenting barrels as we have no time for alcohol at the moment. We are going to be deconstructing them and using the resources to build ourselves a proper storage facility for a bunch of weapons like the ones that the Outlanders dropped. Just as well, underneath our current barracks, we are going to be doing the exact same thing, except specifically in this storage room we are going to be storing food so we don't have to go all that far to eat. We would also begin collecting resources like compacted steel and machinery, since our first wave is simply going to be the Outlanders and we have so much time before they get here, we should go ahead and start working on some security measures, i.e. some heavy turrets with some steel embrasures around them to protect them. We would also throw in a few spike traps here and there just for good measure. For now, we had just enough resources to put one of these heavy turrets wrapped in its steel embrasures in all 4 corners of the base and the perimeter. And as you can see with your eyeballs on the screen currently, it worked out pretty well. We have a very good area covered by all of these turrets. There's essentially nowhere that they can hide unless, well, actually they're hiding behind something, but you know what I mean. With all these new electronic toys that we're building to defend our new home, we would also need some better proper power production, as the solar panels we currently have from the Outlanders are only going to take us so far, and it would be very quick before we ran out of power completely. All that yapping just to say that we built a geothermal power generator. Yeah, I should mention as well, since we're starting literally right after picking up off of where the last colony left off, I suppose. I'm not good with words, obviously. It is currently fall. We are not starting in spring, so we need to go ahead and start growing some food just in case there's a rough winter down here. Because unless we can manage to find a ship off the planet in the very near future, we are going to be here for a while. The Outlanders know a thing or two about agriculture, but this here, boys, is called tilled soil, and it is going to expeditiously grow our rice. But don't look now, as it would seem our very first wave has arrived. I'm a little bit disappointed, as I thought they'd be able to muster more forces. I mean, we did take an entire base from them very quickly. Oh well though, as bad as we hate to go out and have to kill them, I mean, we kinda have to, otherwise they're going to keep pelting us with their pathetic bullets until we're forced to. So, okay, for our very first reward, we're going to be going with a plasteel drop. It's only 100 plasteel, but that's actually 100 more than we currently have in our disposal, so it's good. Eventually, we could of course use it for some upgraded defenses and turrets against these droids once they start coming. Luckily for us, they too occasionally drop plasteel when killed, so that would be quite a bit. Before the next wave, we were also going to go ahead and work on a few little projects like a radio terminal and orbital trade beacons. That way, well, we could go ahead and trade with any orbital traders in orbit around the planet, as you well know, I'm sure. Since we are in a forest now, and it's quite unlike the desert where we didn't have much vegetation, there could be a big old forest fire that burns down the base, so we decided to build some natural pathing all around the perimeter to prevent that from happening, like a fire barrier. We had also planned on using the vegetation to our advantage by cutting down a shit ton of trees, collecting all that wood, and eventually we would end up building some spike traps. But before we got around to that, Wave 2 was here. Ooh, this time it looks like they sent 3 Outlanders to try to stop us. Can you guess how it ended up for them? Yeah, they died. For this reward, we decided to have a colonist join us, as we weren't too interested in cash just yet, and we had plenty of weapons. A nice human lady would fall from the sky, and she was wielding 2 knives. Those would be great against Outlanders, but hardly against the droids. Speaking of which, our Wave 3 appears to be Outlanders once more, which is kind of a pain in the ass, as we're pretty hyped up to fight the droids, so we need to take care of our little Outlander situation. That way they're not impeding our progress. We're sending out a caravan party to serve as something of a liaison to go and glaze the Outlanders just a little bit so they want to be our pals again. And by glaze them, I mean give them plenty of weapons and anything else that we found at the base, which realistically was theirs already, but don't tell them that. And we would be able to offer it to them as a gift, making them now neutral. Well, it was quite easy to get on their good side, but if I were them, I wouldn't want to be on our bad side either. Finally, it was time for us to head back home and start fighting our waves of droids. Oh, looks like the Outlanders came anyhow, and they're friendly. We just kinda need to wait for them to leave, I guess. That's fine, as it just gives us more time to work on a few things around our new base, such as a recreation station and/or area where we're going to build an arcade machine, a computer, as well as a chess table. As mentioned, our clone Marines have joy wires, so this isn't exactly needed, as they don't really give a shit, although sometimes they do recreational activities, I suppose. But as we continue getting more and more colonists joining us, this is going to be crucial. Eventually, the Outlanders did leave, and for our reward, I would choose a mini turret drop. Now, I do want to say, though, because they were friendly, I'm not sure if Winston Waves just kind of messed up or whatever. We actually got to choose multiple rewards, springing us forward by quite a few waves, but I did go through and get rid of all of those rewards so that we're not cheating realistically, just so you know. Anywho, though, now that we have some simple turrets, we're also going to go ahead and set up some steel embrasures for them as well around the perimeter of our base. They won't do near as well as our heavy turrets, but hopefully they can draw some fire. Just as well, in case our enemies decide to get a little bit up close and personal, we're going to be using the wood that we collected, as mentioned previously, to go ahead and finish up those wooden spike traps to help us out quite a bit. Finally, our enemies, the clankers, have arrived. As much as we had hoped to see them rusting out in the rain, we've decided to take matters into our own hands, a true test of our might and battle prowess. Unlike with the Outlanders, the blaster fire from the droids was actually beginning to sting a little bit, but eventually we took them all out. Now it's time for a little prize. For our reward after this wave, I've decided to go with a fuel drop. We had given all of ours that we had in storage to the Outlanders to make sure they quit attacking us so we could fight the droids, and I would like to have some for a vehicle. Now, I normally say that in these Winston Waves videos, but this time I'm serious. serious. We decided to focus on resource collection in between the last wave and this new wave coming up, of course, by deconstructing many of the ruins in the area, giving us some stone blocks as well as steel, which we very much needed for defenses and so on and so forth. And going along with that as well, we were also mining some veins of steel and compacted machinery. The droids would arrive once more, and this time we're starting to see a bit of variety. Not only B1 and B2 battle droids or the super heavy, but some droidicas and what have you as well. Finally spicing it up a bit, although none of them had quite the range that our blasters did, and thus they would easily fall to our might. But don't be fooled, friends, this easy fighting won't be like this for long. Reward this time around, I wanted to take a chance and go with a random normal reward, with our others only being weapons or medicine, and I'm glad I did because this ended up being medicine and packaged survival meals, so a good choice even if it was a bit of a risk. We're also going to go ahead and set up a temporary workshop under something of a little gazebo, carport, something like that I suppose. We're going to be using our machining table under here to begin deconstructing all of the droids that we're killing. Having 4 clone space marines who have all the augmentations making them much faster and have a much higher manipulation, this would go very quickly and very smoothly. We needed steel and other resources to start working on some car parts for our vehicle. I told you this time around I'm serious about building one, but how well it'll hold up against the droids is yet to be seen. Speaking of the filthy clankers, we have a bunch of the special ops droids, the assassins, coming with their grenades and sniper rifles. Since they have a much more superior range than our blasters, I thought it would be a good idea for us to attack them head on, because if we were to wait and our turrets started engaging with them, we would basically lose all of them far too quickly. And though we took a bit of damage in doing so, we would end up winning the day, thankfully. I wasn't really ready for another colonist, nor did I feel like feeding and taking care of 10 wargs, so we went with yet another fuel drop. We're gonna need some gas in the tank anyhow, as most of the fuel we currently have is going to be used to build the vehicle. Next up we have Wave 10, and it looks like during this wave we are going to be fighting not only the standard forces that would be coming, but just as well some reinforcements. Oh, I would be worried, but at least it's not a double trouble raid, I suppose. Besides, it's simply going to be more steel for the salvage pile, eh? And would you look at that, it wouldn't take long at all before the walking humps of junk came and we started blasting them down into oblivion. My favorite part is that these droids hardly have any range, especially the super heavy battle droids, and we just basically take them out very easily. I think in a few waves though we're going to see some incredible numbers coming at us, so we need to prepare for that. Once again, we are going to be requesting a mini turret drop, as I think that'll help us prep our base in terms of defenses. Naturally, as we've discussed, blasters will absolutely melt through mini turrets like hot butter, but if they can distract our enemies long enough, we might be able to get away or even get a good critical shot in. We are now putting the finishing touches on our vehicle, and I suppose I could go ahead and spoil it for you. We are going to be building ourselves a roadkill tank. If this one does well, or I suppose even if it doesn't, we may try to collect enough resources to build some of the higher tier types of tanks that we have at our knowledge base and disposal as well. But I think this is a good starter for us to test out. We've seen just how well our blaster fire can do against the droids. I think that the explosive damage from the tank turret should be able to handle them quite well also. Not only does the tank serve as a brand new weapon for us, but it also essentially serves as a large set of armor for Emma, our only human colonist who isn't a clone space marine wearing the big massive armor, so hopefully it protects her quite well also. Looks like we're about to find out, as we have a large group of B1 battle droids coming right for us, the perfect test for the tank, I would think. Not only does the tank help Emma mimic a fraction of the firepower of our space marines, but also also their speed. She's able to keep up with them relatively well. The battle would commence, and we would manage to get a shot or two off from the tank, but it was quickly taking a lot of fire. We dispatched of the droids, but then I noticed that the tank had taken a lot of damage and was leaking chem fuel all over the place. Seems like it might definitely be used a lot better at a pretty good distance away, where it can't get shot. For our reward this time, we actually had a random legendary reward that we could choose, so obviously this was going to be our choice, as I mean, anything else would just be stupid. We ended up getting a lot of industrial medicine, glitter world medicine, and a shit ton of packaged survival meals, as well as a small handful or so of healer mech serum, so we should be good to go in terms of food and medicine for a very long time. During the last wave, we had a meteor storm happen. Actually, it appears that we had 2 meteor storms going on simultaneously, and even after the wave ended, of course, it would take a while before these would finish. Although with 2 of them going on, the entire map was becoming absolutely cluttered with granite meteorites everywhere. Funny enough, it looks like our next wave is also going to have a meteor storm happening, so it doesn't seem like we're going to be catching a break from the meteorites anytime soon. Since we were essentially just waiting around on the next wave, and also for one of these space rocks to drop right in on our heads and smash us to pieces, I decided maybe we should work on the base a bit more. Everyone doesn't seem to like sleeping in this shabby little barracks, as you could imagine why, I'm sure, so we decided to start building everyone some separate rooms. The 2 meteor storms had finally ended, and just before the next would begin, I was taking a look around the area, and when I said cluttered earlier, I really meant it, although I don't think I realized it was going to be to this degree, honestly. This is a bit of a problem because this does mean we're not going to really have a clear line of sight at the droids for the next few waves, or really any more waves unless we start some major mining projects. However, though, before we could mine anything, the droids were dropping in right on top of this. Many of them even in our warehouses and kitchen. They sprang from their drop pods and we sprang into action, taking cover wherever we could, firing at them. The assassin droids, of course, would make it not so easy for us, but once we took on the main group that was outside and finally defeated them, we began moving inside our warehouse and kitchen and finishing off the stragglers that were left over. Crazily, we ended up getting yet another legendary reward, and obviously this was going to be our choice instead of mini turrets or anything else realistically, and we ended up getting a lot of silver, a good bit of jade, and a lot of gold. Looks like we won't have to do any trading anytime soon anyway. Before the next wave began, we would have to spend a lot of time and resources rebuilding what was destroyed in the last wave with the droids, our seating in the kitchen, where we cook our meals, and also our storage facilities, and also our little carport workshop that we had built, or whatever we were calling it. This actually marks the first time, though, since we've been at this new base and finding the droids that we really even had to rebuild, so I would call that a win in itself. Most of the damage was just to some basic infrastructure, of course, instead of our defenses, so we shouldn't have to work too awful hard. Now then, do you remember, like, I don't know, 4 minutes ago when I said, at least these reinforcements, it's not a double trouble wave? Well, our next wave is indeed a double trouble wave, so this should be fun. Thankfully, they wouldn't land right on top of this time, and it looks like they plan on planning for a while before eventually attacking us. We really need to get some mortars going. For now, though, the best alternative that we currently have is our tank, and we would manage to get quite a little strike in at a decent-sized group of them, but we didn't kill any, so yeah. It does appear that we've pissed them off enough so that they're ready to attack us. I guess that's better than nothing, right? As the major onslaught of enemies began coming our way, I realized that that meteor storm we had works both ways, and with all of these meteorites that hit the ground in the way of the droids, the entire group couldn't fire at us, and they were actually kind of being funneled around them, making it easier for us to kill them. We also had the bright idea of using the tank to try to run them over, but they basically melted the treads, immediately, and it was about to explode. Emma jumped out and got shot to the ground. A bit of good news with the bad, though. Sure, she's probably in crippling pain, but she's not dead. We may have lost the tank trying to run them over and to blow them up, but it did distract them long enough for us to kill quite a few of them, leaving only a handful left, and once we finished those off, we could go ahead and rescue Emma. But first, we need to choose our reward. We're going to be going with some targeters. Now, not only would this be an orbital beam targeter and a bombardment targeter, but we would also end up getting a tornado generator, so some big bad weapons for the future big bad waves. Initially, I was worried that Emma was going to bleed to death and die, but thanks to our medicine drop from earlier, we have the best medicine around, and I think she'll be a-okay, given some time to heal, of course. As I mentioned earlier, I think it'd be a good idea for us to go ahead and get a mortar going, and we actually have one. If you have a keen eye, you probably saw that earlier. This one is actually some type of quad mortar, so we can shoot more than one shell at once. All we need to do now is manufacture some of the high explosive shells, which we would do. Ironically, though, our very next wave, the droids were dropping in scattered all over the place instead of a large group and preparing, so the mortar's not going to be very useful right now. On the contrary, though, this would actually make things a good bit easier, I would think. Other than the droids that were landing right within feet from our turrets, the rest of them would have to travel a good distance around all the meteorites that had already fallen to get to our defenses. Now you might be saying to yourself, Rat Daddy, why do I give a shit if they're coming in individual sections instead of in large groups? Well, my friend, the reason why that's important, because that is going to make it so much easier, not only for our defenses like our heavy turrets and also mini turrets, to pick them off one by one. But as we went around in a group with the clone marines, we could do the exact same thing, making this wave a piece of cake. And with that, our next reward, I would choose a poor weapons drop. We have plenty of wood, and I don't really care about genetics for the time being, so I think a good blaster, which is exactly what we ended up getting, would be much better for Emma here instead of the assault rifle that she was using previously. By God almighty, if we can keep her alive long enough, I'd like to turn her into something of a clone marine herself. Although she wouldn't be much of a clone, she could be some type of Imperial Marine, and perhaps we could even set up a cloning station here. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Now that we finally have a lot of plasteel, we could go ahead and build ourselves an auto cannon, and normally these don't hold up too well against the droids, as we saw in our first episode of this little series that we're doing, but with all of our other turrets keeping them at bay, I think it'll help a lot. But don't look now, for the next wave is here, and this time around they are indeed entering the area on foot, and they look to be planning out their attack. Perfect for our mortar. We will, however, need to exercise some extreme caution, as there is an orbital bombardment going on with this raid, and if one of those were to hit our mortar shells, then we're going to go kaput. But there's no time like the present. Let's load this bad boy up and get to work. Well, that kinda sorta worked. We did manage to take out a few of the droids. I think if we can manage to get a lot of those mortars going, we could really do some actual damage to these raids. For now, though, it is still a great tactic for weakening their ranks before we send in the kill squad of our marines, which is exactly what we did this time around, and we finally finished them off. Our reward, I decided to go with a random good reward, as a ghoul probably wouldn't be all that much help and would just get blasted into oblivion, and we have plenty of food. We ended up getting yet another orbital bombardment targeter, so we could just add that to our pile of them. But my friends, we are currently sitting at wave 15, and I think that we have truly demonstrated just how powerful our clone space marines are. Though we did have some trouble here and there, we are doing very, very well, and I look forward to having many raids in the future, of course, and also defeating them. It'll be fun seeing just how many we can take on before they eventually overwhelm us, or if we're lucky, we might just be able to get off this damn dirty planet with a ship in time. Yes. Hey, do you see that? What's that? Yeah, that right there. The little green soccer ball with tentacle arms and legs. Uh-oh. Well, it would appear that we have more than just the droids to deal with. See you later.